I can start by saying thank you to those at our last meeting who were letting us know about the sound. Hopefully, it is substantially better tonight. Do you want to give Sue or Ryan the chance to speak so they can learn that?
Oh, Elizabeth, it keeps moving around.
Good to go. How does it sound,
Sound-
Elizabeth?
The sound is good. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Okay. All right.
We good?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, all right. Well, we are.
We're a small group.
We're moving. We're a small group. There's only 4 of us. Fairly warm.
No, that's an important agenda.
That's okay. Instructions on exiting the building. Out the door, go right down the stairs. There's a safety area in front of the elevator. There's also a set of stairs down that hallway as well. Agenda additions, deletions, or changes in the order of agenda items.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Oh, I'll give you an extra second.
That was already right.
But-
I'm just sorry, it was.
Do your thing.
There's one additional thing just to talk about a few potential tweaks to language in the RTE LDR section, not for this round of amendments for the city council, but A&R had a few like slight wording changes that would just clarify that we've communicated to them would be something the planning commission would consider with the next round of amendments, likely in the fall or early winter.
Okay.
So that's just
So do you
bit of a,
want to add that into the agenda or?
Just under other business, we'd like
Okay,
to
okay.
just give you
Alright,
a
sure.
preview of the thing that we learned this week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Right. Open to the public for items not related to the agenda. We do have some folks online. Does not look like they have any items. All right, announcements and staff report. Any commissioner announcements? Nope, okay. Staff?
Just that there was a good turnout yesterday for the official groundbreaking of the bicycle and pedestrian bridge over exit or over I-89 by exit 14. Commissioner Matag was there, Council Chair Barrett was there, and we're off and running. It's exciting.
Yep, pretty exciting. Yep, and we had reps from all 3 federal offices there. Thomas Renner was there from Becca's office, and then we had somebody from both Bernie and Peter's office as well. Excellent. They both spoke, and then Havla Gagne from the Bike and Ped Committee spoke as well. So, and we all melted because it was about 80 degrees. Full sun, no shade.
Well, actually,
And then we pretended to take we had like 12 people lined up with shovels and there was nothing to shovel. So they were resting on grass. So it's very symbolic, right? Then all the ECI guys lined up in their orange vests and then they got their picture taken, you know, doing the same thing, which is not shoveling anything. Then we all left and they fired up one of the machines and it went into the ground, I think. And something. So.
yeah, and then just a couple of significant staffing updates that our new deputy city manager is starting next week, which is very exciting. Nicholas Strelli Castro, who up until now has been the city manager in Barrie City, will be joining our team. He's already attended a few things, including the city council's policy priorities work last month. So we're really excited to have him joining. And on the flip side, tomorrow is Tom DePietro's last day with the city as our public works director. He's served the city for 20 plus years and it's very big shoes to fill. Erica Qualentole, who's been with the city for a few years and has been our deputy director for capital projects and is really sharp. She's going to be taking over as interim director. So
yeah, Tom was a great guy. He was always very responsive. And I did a lot of work with him way back on the stormwater system in our development.
back when we knew him as Stormwater Tom.
We still know him as Stormwater.
Yeah, but he was always very responsive, you know, he asked something, he came back right away.
Those are my updates.
All Number 5, LDR amendments, minor change and review of PC reports. I don't know. Kelsey, if you want to give us a quick update or.
They really are minor.
Yeah, they do the.
I had to read them each twice.
Yeah, to see what was going on. Yeah, there were a couple of minor amendments that were recommended to clarify some language after another reread by some of our development review staff for one of them, and then something we identified for the other that was worth bringing to the city council to have fixed and clarified in this round of amendments. They're minor in nature as stated, and therefore we're allowed to make that change after the planning commission hearing, but 14 days before the city council hearing. The planning commission has to decide if they are require changes to the PC reports, so the statutory reports that come from the planning commission and go to the state. Paul and I reviewed the reports, and our recommendation is that no changes are needed. As stated, they're minor enough changes that the substance of the amendments that is captured in the reports is remains the same. So, but the planning commission has to take an official action to basically reaffirm that those are the report. That's the report for LDR 2608.
Everybody
I
ready?
could make that proposed motion.
Yep.
I move that the planning commission confirm that the planning commission report for LDR 26-08 does not require amendment after minor changes to the amendments were made by the city council on July 20th, 2026.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That is unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Number 6, transferable
Yes,
development
it's fine.
rights. There is a memo attached to that, which everybody read. Looked at.
Right.
So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm gonna try not to retread too much of what's in the memo, but last summer, when you had advanced a series of amendments to the land development regulations, including city center, that increased heights, the council, in adopting the regulations, asked that the commission explore additional opportunities for purchase for TDRs to be sold, including for heights and city center. You started the conversation in April at your second meeting in April. And at that meeting, you asked us to sharpen our pencils a little bit and come back with some specific ways in which they might be able to be used. Specifically, at the time, I think we called them like flipping the TDRs, but really fundamentally the question being, how can a TDR be a win-win? Meaning that if the private property owner developer chooses not to use the TDRs to get more intensity, then that's success for the city. And if they choose to buy the TDRs, you're also satisfied with the outcome, and that's a tricky balance to find. And then, of course, fundamentally with TDRs, there has to be a constraint that somebody wants to buy. That's the sort of the challenge of it, when you spend a lot of years right sizing the regulations to make sure that we're regulating for what we want. So in your packet are series of concepts, or more than concepts, specific ideas that staff had come up with that might align with this, and then one that we didn't love but we put in there anyway. And we just thought that this would be a good opportunity for you to continue this dialogue. Yeah.
I start with just a question based on your last meeting, and Paul, you were recorded as talking about parking, using TDRs for parking.
Yeah.
And when I look at the law, right, allowable percentage decrease in lot size or increase in building bulk, lot coverage, or ratio floor area to lot size, or any combination, parking is part, I would guess, of that building bulk? Or how would you?
So that's a great question. It's a great starting point for this conversation, Megan. Kelsey and I did look at exactly that issue. Parking in and of itself as the physical placement of vehicles, we concluded doesn't meet the statute as a physical function. However, as you say, lot coverage is. And so one of the concepts in here is especially in the commercial industrial areas, setting a maximum ratio of your surface impervious surface, which is often used for parking or predominantly used for parking, to building. And that would be a way that would be conforming with the rule, because you're talking about the coverage of land that happens to be, in most cases, used for parking. So it's close, but it's not, we can't regulate the actual use of parking.
Didn't we already,
TDRs.
or didn't somebody already sell one to Shearer because they wanted to expand the?
Correct. So they wanted more lot coverage.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you've already allowed in some areas of the city, let's say the cap, I'm making up this number, but let's say the cap is 50% lot coverage. You already do allow them to buy an additional 10%, so up to 60%. So that is a tool that's in there now. There has been a little bit of demand for it. Our analysis suggests that if you wanted to, and it felt it was appropriate, another way to look at this would be the relative amounts, not just the, lot coverage can be up to 50%, because you could have a building that's only 3% of that land. You could establish a relationship between the building and the lot, which would, based on historical development patterns, depending on where you set that number, might generate the purchase of TDRs or the choice of somebody to dedicate less land to non-building impervious surface, most of which is parking usually. We did feel that we would recommend being very careful in city center, because impervious surface can also be patios. And it can also be walkways and plazas and things like that. And so, as the numbers get closer, we don't get to know how somebody would choose to allocate the amount that they have. And they might say, well, I want it for parking, but not for.
Yeah,
Plazas.
that's the big difference between lot coverage. Lot coverage is anything impervious. So parking is something that is often used for large amounts of lot coverage, but you can't say parking without restricting the equivalent amount of other impervious surface under the state law, is our interpretation of it.
So I was also intrigued by the large homes, and this is something that Donna brought up. And it was included in the packet for today, where if we were to go beyond 1,500 to 2,000 square foot homes, or, single family or multiplex or condos or whatever, I think that matches the definition of what you said, which is we are seeking to discourage certain behavior or encourage certain behavior, but we're okay with whatever the result is. And I'll speak for myself, but I think that encouraging smaller homes is a good thing. So setting, I guess, a cap, 1,500 or 2,000 square feet, and then saying, okay, but if you want to build your bigger home, you have to use TDRs. I think that is serving the purpose of conserving land. So I could see that as a payoff. And I could also put forward that, I am not for government imposing you must live in a 1,500 square foot home. I think that people who have larger homes pay more in taxes to our city, that they play a role in supporting our city services. And I am certainly not, in any kind of class warfare here. We need to have people of all walks of life in the city. So I saw that as a really nice entry point for me into this discussion.
It was actually brought up years ago
Mm.
on the TDR committee as one of the possibilities. I think Monica Ostby maybe raised it. But yeah, discouraging mansions or encouraging reasonably sized houses. I like that idea. There were two others of these that one was establishing a height threshold, and the other was to allow TDRs in districts that aren't currently eligible other than city center. And the parking, I think it would be it's complicated, but if we can get it right, those are the 4 points you made, possibilities. And I'm not sure about more height than, the second one, allow more height than is presently allowed via the use of TDRs. I didn't mark that one as being appealing to me.
Just so that I'm following along, Michael,
On page 3.
are you looking at the April memo or the July memo?
I'm looking at the
The
April
July.
memo.
Okay.
Okay,
I think you were too.
Yes.
There was a
that's where I
link to the
started.
April memo in the,
In the beginning of the
yeah.
July
in the,
memo.
Overall, I think a lot of these are very workable ideas. I do like the idea of putting some sort of cap on bigger homes. I think it serves a lot of useful purposes. One thing that I didn't see in here that Michael did mention, I just wanted to go back to from our last conversation, was about height. I went back to the 9/2 city council meeting, which is where they talked about it and they passed this. And there's about a 10-minute discussion. And the council specifically talked about, hey, we ought to put a restriction on height here with TDRs for the final, I forget how many floors they were talking about. Let's send this back to planning and see what they say. So that, when it was passed, and then that motion was passed, I believe 4-1, to kick it back to us to try and implement that.
so they
So,
passed it as is, and they asked you to look at it.
yes.
So it wasn't kicked back, that draft wasn't kicked back.
Well, this question was.
The question was, but not
Right.
the draft, I just want to be
And-
clear
and
on that, like.
From the way I looked at it, and I've had some conversations with people that are saying that it's actually kind of, now there's a bit of a question among developers as to, well, are we gonna have the TDRs or are we not gonna have the TDRs? Because when it was passed back in September, it was pretty clear council wanted to add the TDRs to the building height. So I think we ought to at least say specifically, yes, we do, or no, we don't, to answer that question, because there seems to be that ambiguity hanging out there now. So, the concern that you mentioned about changing the rules on people, well, they kind of left it as, well, the rules are TDRs are coming. From that conversation, that was my takeaway of that part of the discussion, was there seemed to be a great deal of interest among the council as to
And we
implement that.
did talk about saying, okay, anything above, you've got 8 or 9 in the T4, T5 district, anything above that would require TDRs or whatever number we wanted.
Yeah, but
If
we
in an
had,
area which is allowed, where they allow 14, maybe that threshold can be higher. But
Will we go higher than 14?
no. Anything above, let's say 12, for example, the last 2, or a number that makes sense.
Again, I totally disagree with this. I don't think we should be changing the rules midstream, but also there's been very little demand to do anything even close to that size.
Not yet.
And I don't know that we're gonna, create a huge demand, but just going back to my overall thought on this entire thing is, I'm very hesitant to be not rigging, that's probably the wrong word, tweaking the LDRs to create an artificial demand for something that does not have a demand right now. I'm okay with, existing constraints that could be alleviated via TDRs, because that's something that's already there, but I think we go back and start redoing things just to create a demand for TDRs when
Well, there's
we're trying to create an artificial market for something that doesn't have a demand right now.
expand the market.
Yeah, but I disagree with creating regulations to try to sell some of these things. I just don't think I think that's bad policy.
Because
That's my opinion.
just one of the markets that's disappeared is the market that we used to have for places like South Village or Cider Mill, or where a lot of TDRs were bought to get more density.
Mhm.
But those kinds of developments are sort of out now.
So.
Well, and even to the extent that they exist, the state law that set the minimum,
Or units.
the 5 units an acre in all areas served by water and sewer, sort of eviscerated the tool that did exist in our community, and you all and the council agreed back when that took place, that the only way to really make that work would be to substantially upzone parts of the city that where this scale had been already deemed to be appropriate, and you'd have to go sort of 2 levels up for TDRs to work. So that sort of eviscerated that as a tool.
Mhm. So I tend to agree with, unless there's a demand, I don't see the purpose of that suggestion. And I would see that as something to perhaps put not in our city center, since I do tend to be swayed by, at least for now, unless we become Manhattan someday soon. Okay, but we're not. That we leave the city center as is, and that we think about what other parts of the city would we be okay with if people wanted to go up, like Route 7, like Williston Road, where I live.
The north side of Williston Road,
Yeah.
obviously, but
Yeah.
you know, if we don't go up in a big way, probably beyond my lifespan, but we'll never get to get to certain things that we need, that we want. For instance, the only reason that we've got transit here now is because we've got density.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
high rises, one, they're very affordable,
Mhm.
and 2, they produce density, and they're extremely tax efficient for the city.
Mhm.
So, but beyond all that, just to comment on Duncan's concerns, the city has other concerns because we may have, well, we have an obligation. Whether it's legal or not, I don't know, but I know that, for instance, we have all these NRP lands south of Nolan Farm Road.
Mhm.
Well, I think it was an expectation among the landowners that they could sell TDRs. Having given up the right to develop. That's in fact what the TDRs were designed for in the first place. So.
Yeah, we have to-
I thought we did ask that, I think legally, the city does not have a legal obligation to
I think,
compensate people if their TDRs are not sold or take over the TDR.
so I'm not the city attorney, but generally speaking, that is generally true.
Mhm.
Political questions are another thing, completely. And there's some nuance to it, but I think that as a general statement is correct, that there's not a lot of room for a TDR, a property owner that has TDRs now to sue the city for inability to sell the TDRs. Now, if the TDR program became so restrictive that you could only use TDRs in the equivalent of, 5% of the city or something, only in a very small zoning district or something else, then there starts to become a little more of a question. But when there are a lot of places that we've allowed the use of TDRs and for different things. But the economics of it is not the city's responsibility.
Actually, one more quick question, sorry. Tim, can I carry you in on this conversation?
Sure.
Have you gotten a lot of feedback from owners of TDRs or people who have TDRs that they are unhappy or distressed about not being able to sell them? I'm just wondering, what was the impetus to ask us to tweak the program?
We had one resident who came in and spoke during public comment at a city council meeting like 9 months ago, maybe almost a year ago, complaining that she had some DDRs that she just couldn't sell.
Mhm.
And she felt it was the city's responsibility to buy them or compensate or whatever it might be, right?
Mhm.
And I think there are probably a couple more people behind her that feel the same way. I personally have not been contacted by any other landowners. There's a kind of a slippery slope here, right? Depending upon what happened so many years ago when, zoning changed and people's rural southeast quadrant became NRP. And this program was made available. Several developers bought, you know, some units for, like South Village, those were all internal units, right? I'm sure Edgewood used some, I'll bet Spear Meadows bought a few. But there was no, I don't think there was any guarantee by any entity that these could be sold, and now you have the state that's changed the rules entirely as well. So trying to expand the market for TDRs is a good thing, right? But I think you need to be careful because, you know, nobody was promised anything.
Thank you.
So it's a balanced situation, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still think that we should think creatively. If we're not legally bound to it, I would say that we're kind of ethically bound to it in a way. And that we do serve the public, and there are members of our public who did this in good faith. And so I would be open to the lot coverage, again, thinking about, you know, where our most porous soils are and what areas of the city could take more impervious surface, right? I don't think we need to do this close to the lake, for instance, or in some kind of watershed close to the lake. That would be counterproductive to our, you know, to our clean lake goals. But in other areas of the city, and I come back to my neighborhood, quite frankly, I come back to the airport. Beta has just expanded. All of Kibble Avenue, I mean, except for some buildings, but a lot of it's just one floor, right? Why? Why next to the highway and Kimball Avenue can we not go up? You know, that's our business park. And maybe we don't care if it goes up, but maybe somebody would like to go up, you know. I know OnLogic now has a big building there, and I know FedEx is there as well. And so I don't know exactly, I haven't studied, sorry, Kelsey, I haven't studied every document on that website, on all those websites that you sent to me. But if there is a set limit and we're saying, well, let's sweeten the deal, let's, you know, let's let you go up how many more floors you want if you get TDRs, you know, focusing on our business parks, focusing on the airport, focusing on our hospitality, you know, expanding it. I know that homes and commercial, residential, commercial, again, I haven't read everything, but there are probably different rules. Could we, you know, within our city center area, I know it's not all a TIF district, but is there a way for perhaps residential to move to commercial using TDRs if there's a different lot coverage rule? I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. I have yet to go through with a fine tooth comb. So just how can we be creative to develop our economic base? That's really how I see this. And just like you said, going up is good for us tax wise. It's good for us. It's in our interest, right?
I guess I'm okay with what you're talking about as long as it's within, you know, existing constraints. I'm not in favor of creating new constraints to sell TDRs.
Yeah.
I guess that's simply how I feel on that front. Completely agree with you, and I do agree we do have some sort of ethical obligation to, and we have made increases to the market.
It's expanded outside of the southeast
Yeah.
quadrant, first of all,
We
it's
have-
expanded in,
Specifically, no one was the second quadrant at all.
right, it
Yeah.
has
Receiving it.
moved to
So
outside
it's
of
not
the,
like we've been completely, you know,
it's added
silent on the subject. We have made some changes.
additional floors on the, in the Shelburne Road corridor in height. Changed the value and sort of reworked it so it was a more simple sort of calculus to figure out what they're worth. Allowed them to be applied for things that are not residential. Previously it had been sort of a unit for a unit, residential primarily, if not only. And then now it can be used for any building, in almost all areas of the city except for city center, and the southeast quadrant areas. Yeah, so there's been some, it's changed significantly in the last 5 years, but it has also, and it's diversified what you can do with them. It's no longer just the South Village example of a housing unit from here becomes a housing unit over here. It's changed a bit. Alongside that, though, is when the state has changed a lot of rules about housing density and about units and numbers of units in buildings and all of those things. And South Burlington has run along with that and even gone past what the state has done in a few specific ways. So the changes to the TDR system in the last 5 years, in my opinion, have been to adapt a bit to the more permissive residential structure that's allowed, because that sort of unit for unit wasn't valuable anymore because of everything the floor got raised. So then expanding it into commercial, et cetera, was a way to balance that out, without affecting the TIF district and city center as a primary concern.
I think a challenge that the city is facing now on this subject is that the TDRs, while they can be used in a lot of areas, are really set in a way that was intended to be more of a carrot than a stick in a lot of ways, in that it is set for the most part a little bit beyond what today's market demand is. And so we have allowed for 7 stories along the Shelburne Road corridor with the use of TDRs. We haven't seen anything bigger than 5 yet.
And 5 is allowed by right without.
And 5 is allowed without.
Mhm.
Same thing in Tech Park where there is, and that area, there is additional height. There hasn't been a demand yet. We anticipate growing into a demand, but in terms of the problem of 2026 and thereabouts, it's a little bit past where the market is today. So that's a challenge that you have, that we're not seeing a lot of inquiries for purchasing today.
Okay, all right, here's another out of the box kind of idea, especially for me, you know who I am. Let's let them build parking lots. They can be recouped later on. If that's the carrot, let's let them do it instead of a patio, knowing that in the future, cars are probably gonna dwindle in number and we can recuperate it for a patio. I'm just throwing that out there.
And that's
If that-
essentially today's rules, right? I mean, that can happen already today.
Yeah.
Back in the day, I was asked to survey a few developers, and I talked to the guy at the corner of Fayette, that development. And I asked him if you were able to build another story on that building on the corner with TDRs, would you have done it? He said, yes, absolutely. So, but that's, a few years ago when we were just developing these TDR rules. But I think the other thing we need to do is make TDRs more attractive. 2,000 square feet is probably not enough for a developer.
Of what you get.
Yeah, you need to get more, maybe double that.
So that is one of the levers, as noted in the memo, that the commission, you can talk about adjusting the TDR program in terms of what other things could you buy, height, lot coverage, things like that. The other thing that you can do is set what a TDR is worth. So right now a TDR is on the sending end, 0.83 acres. We would not recommend adjusting that because it's changes a lot of things for the sellers. On the use side, on the receiving side, it is currently worth 2,000 square feet, which was something
By a story.
per story, right? I think that when the commission developed this a few years ago, it was more or less equivalent to a dwelling unit, which is what they used to be worth. The commission could say it's 4,000, 8,000, an acre. You can,
And it can be worth different amounts in different districts as well.
right.
If we were really trying to incentivize the use of TDRs and additional, for example, additional heights to the 8th or 9th floor on the Shelburne Road corridor, it could be worth 10,000 square feet. Where in, other areas, for whatever reason, it's only worth 2,000 because you could still use it, but it's not as valuable. So it's another way to sort of both incentivize them being bought and then applied, but also to direct it to the places where we're talking about having it anyway. There's a lot of moving parts there because, if it's worth more, then you're more likely to sell one or two, but then you're actually less likely to sell 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, because you don't need that many TDRs to do the same amount of development. So there's a balance in there as well.
No, I wouldn't go above 4,000 or 5,000 square feet. 4 maybe.
Out of how many total? Is that just like a
For
set
ev-
number,
for each-
or are we talking about proportions?
For each 4,000 square feet or part thereof, you have to, if
can
you want
double
to
it.
use it, you gotta buy a TDR.
Okay, no matter the square footage of your building.
Beyond that which you're already given,
Right.
so.
So it's just a set
right, so
number,
along
whether you're
Sheldon
building a
Road, for
20,000
example,
square foot building or a 10,000 square foot building.
Yeah, the way the structure is set up now is it's effectively, I think of it as a Lego brick. You know, it's 2,000 square feet of footprint by a story of height. So if you want to add lot coverage or building coverage by a single floor or 0 floors, you
Or
just
sideways.
you're just sticking them up sideways. And if you wanted to add, say, 2,000 square feet, but your building is 4 stories tall, then you need 4 of them to go up those 4 stories. But correct, it wouldn't matter if the original plan for the building was 6,000 square feet or 60,000 square feet, a TDR is equal to one brick.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of making them worth more in certain areas if we can target the areas where we want that.
I would agree.
Is that legally defensible or that
Yep.
that's
Yep.
that passes muster?
It does, both because the statutes say that the city, the municipality shall set the value. And because if you can tie it to a logical planning purpose to say,
This is where.
we want to see additional development where we have transit service along the Sheldon Road corridor is a logical outcome.
Mhm.
And I would say
So,
there is a limit, like I wouldn't, it becomes not allowable if it's like on these 3 properties. But
Yeah,
if it's for a
yeah.
full zoning district that's been established for other zoning and planning
Right.
purposes. And you say, well, this, you know, the MSN is this and the HSMU, you get this value. If you tie it to those districts that were already established, that's,
That to me, that seems like a pretty fair way to, it's getting what we want and incentivizing the sale of a TDR possibly. I mean, I know you might not sell as many, but it doesn't sound like we're selling any right now.
so that's something we can certainly advance for you. It, at least as it stands right now, our assessment is we're still beyond the market, right? So making them a little bit more cost effective will likely help sell them at such time as when the market reaches wanting to have that additional height. We're not there yet.
Mhm.
So just in terms of sort of the fundamental question of if the city's goal is to sell more in the next 2 years, I don't think that's gonna advance it. I'm not saying it's bad policy, but it isn't necessarily gonna advance that goal. But that's also that's your question to wrestle with and, give feedback to council on that goal also, right? So. Or not necessarily on the goal, but on is the tool worth?
is the trade-off
Right,
worth
Yeah.
quick sale? Potentially quicker sale. There's a lot of moving parts in the economics of all of this that's very hard for, a non-economist to even think about
Yeah.
how it would work out. Cause once you pull this lever, then it affects the demand on this other thing and the supply of something else. And we have, as Paul had sort of mentioned, we haven't even seen development to the level that we have allowed in our LDRs over the past 5 years.
Without TDRs.
Without TDRs, we're seeing people that are applying for or coming in for concepts on things that are below the thresholds that are allowed in our regulations, so.
I think you mentioned it because you were in the DRB at the time. Chase wanted to build a 1-story building there.
They desperately
But you
want.
said that we can't use TDRs for something.
To give them less.
Yeah.
The
You
problem
can't get a TDR to build less,
because the statute says it defines it as an increase.
a density
So
increase.
we've batted
Increase in one
around,
floor.
is there a way to say you increase by decreasing? You're
You're
decreasing the level of increase.
To me, that
You're
means-
increasing your burden on the infrastructure by having less on the same amount
To
of.
me,
land,
that would
like,
have been a
was-
no-brainer to say, buy some TDRs
Right.
and lose the
Yeah.
floor, but I guess.
Unfortunately, we had a long meeting. And we can't really get there.
But we want density.
No,
That's
we
the
do,
problem.
but I'm saying a situation like
So
that.
I
would-
think that's, honestly, Michael, I think that's the core of what's going on, is the TDR program is designed at the state level for for a developer to buy more than a town generally wants to allow. We're in a position where we're a town or a city that generally wants to allow more than the developers want to build. So we're on the other end of things. It just doesn't really match with the TDR program as being buying above the regulations.
And so to the extent that when we looked at tools that would create a constraint, which I hear, Duncan, you're not a huge fan of, we did try to look at what are policy areas that we have heard discussion of that the city has not been tackled in the last decade. So we're not revisiting a thing that had been settled. We have been looking at, are there areas where there had been expressed interest that there may be an opportunity to say that it's not a constraint just to create a constraint. It would be that there's a good policy outcome in either direction. But that is obviously, we're just the request to staff was bring some ideas that could work, that could make the market be interested, and this is our list as it stands.
So generally speaking, on the items that you've mentioned, there seems to be a general consensus that in a few of your suggestions, except the one that about extra floors, until we've got Duncan nailed to a cross or something. We've got allowed TDRs in areas that they currently aren't allowed. You had. With not here.
Impervious surface.
Yeah.
I'll bring up the memo.
I know.
Yeah, we had, no.
I'm with you.
Michael, we did talk about areas that are not allowed. There wasn't a lot, there wasn't much
Not much.
left, is there? No, there's
Not
not,
much.
no, there's not much that's.
Think of areas that may be redeveloped, like,
Airport.
no, nearer where I am,
Oh, Swift.
down, not Swift, the street that goes past, the prison.
Yeah,
That's Swift Street.
that is Swift.
No, no,
That you
in the
turn
other
right.
direction.
Farrell.
On the right, if you're going down, on the
Yeah,
right
that's fair.
hand side, there's a few businesses with a building in the middle or at the back of a huge lot. There's lots of space there
Yeah.
for, I hope would be residential eventually to be redeveloped. You could go up there because you could go quite high there because it's, you're not obscuring anybody. There's a forest behind and a highway on the other side. It's a good place, would be a good place to allow TDRs if they aren't already allowed there, but I don't think so.
We can check on that. Some of those properties around where the correctional facility is and clingers are in a 500-year floodplain.
Yeah.
And so their ability and river corridor and other things are, I think some of it's in the 100-year floodplain, are tricky to.
Maybe one of them, because
Yeah.
the others are quite high.
Right, yeah.
So, yeah, we had that. Increase the value of a TDR.
I think that, to me, that's the one that stands out.
What about the
How about
setting a maximum size for a
Right.
dwelling, and then if you want to go over it,
I'm not a fan of that, but I'm only one.
yeah, no, we did talk about it, and I don't know why we dumped it in the end. Can't remember exactly, but
It's not in the minutes.
I think Michael is talking
I'm
about
talking
back
about-
several years ago.
I'm talking during interim zoning.
Yeah.
When I chaired the TDR commission. It had a lot of, there was a lot of interest in it. Because of, I mean, we didn't want to have any more of the things that you see along Spear Street south of Swift. On the east side is huge
Well, here's an argument for you, Duncan. Proportionally speaking, I pay more in taxes than someone who has the 4,000 square foot house pays in taxes. I just want that to be known,
Because of
right?
the tax structure.
Correct.
Yeah.
So it would kind of make it a little bit more equitable in a way. It would be that, upfront payment that would benefit the city.
Besides, when somebody wants to build a 5,000 square foot 3-story home, can probably afford to buy a few TDRs.
They could probably pay more in taxes.
Yeah.
But I won't say that.
Impact fees.
So I know that. I know
Impact
that's
fees.
pretty highly taxed.
That's outside of I
Yeah.
think the, the charge of this.
So that's one I don't know, I think I would agree with that's one we should explore. And
I mean, what would you guys like from us? Rather than giving you a lot.
Right, well, I recognize that you have only 4 members here,
Yeah.
so it's
Mhm.
tricky that from a like formal, we want you to move forward with this, you'd all have to agree. I think we were not anticipating that this subject is settled tonight.
no,
We would love to get some guidance on whether there are any of these that you would like to be explored further, or maybe even better yet, which ones perhaps there is a majority who don't want to follow up on one of these, and then we can sort of take it off the list for
that's
the
what I
future.
was trying to do.
So maybe if it would be okay, we could sort of quickly go through the ones that are in this week's memo. And to sort of, get some sense, and if, ultimately, if you feel like in order to give progress as a commission, you need to have closer to a full committee, that's okay too, right? There's everything that we do is important and time relative, but there's not a like this month versus next month is time critical with this. So you just spoke about the possibility of the setting a cap on new dwelling units. And then having TDRs beyond that. It sounds like there is some interest in that, but not uniform. I'm gonna go back to the beginning. So one that we looked at was the possibility of allowing an even smaller lot size than is allowed now. So one of the things you can do is manipulate lot sizes. Those only really apply in your low scale and medium scale neighborhoods because you don't have lot sizes for the big buildings. You have received a little bit of interest expressed from folks who were exploring townhome styles, who were saying, if we could get a little bit smaller, we might be able to do this. And you did some adjustments actually in this past round of amendments, but there could be potentially more room for that.
In the current round that's in front of city council,
Right.
Next week.
Right, but there could be more room for that. When you did the analysis a couple of years ago, you did a citywide analysis that we could bring back for you that looked at what are the lot sizes of existing housing all around the city. You set the 5,000 number as a number that is reasonably gets most, but there were some homes in the Eastwood neighborhood, certainly in Queen City Park, and in Chamberlain that were below that 5,000 already because they were built
It was
70 years ago.
primarily off of Proctor Avenue in these
Yeah.
areas. Most of them.
So, and it's not unheard of to be smaller than 5,000. There's all sorts of parcels in Burlington that are under 5,000. So that could be a way of allowing TDRs to be purchased in a way that is showing a return. The downside of that, of course, is that you set what you've determined was an appropriate lot size, and now you're allowing it to be smaller. I'm not necessarily saying that going from 5,000 to 4,500 is gonna be a game changer. There's sort of a theory in neighborhood design that what you wanna set your zoning for is one stage more than what exists now. So you wouldn't wanna take an existing neighborhood that is mostly single family homes and say you can put 8-story buildings in the middle of it. It'll feel like it doesn't fit, people be not satisfied with it, but being able to convert to a triplex or something like that can feel very context sensitive. So you'd want to be thoughtful about, you know, where you set that number. You
I
want
think
me to
it's
keep
worth a
going?
discussion, don't you think?
Yeah, no,
For the future? Yeah.
I guess so we would say, okay, you could go down to say 4,000 or 30.
With the purchase of one ADR per.
But we could set that.
Yep.
Delineation as.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's,
That, yeah.
and yeah, okay, so that's something, in each of these, we had some, what we would do as next steps. So I guess what we'll do here is if you think that there's some value in it, there's homework in each of these, so we would spend some time on that. The next one is one that we really didn't love for TDRs, but we identified as we were going through this as a potential thing to improve regardless, which is any subdivision that creates that requires 3 or more buildings to access it on a single driveway has to become a road now in our regulations. A road has a lot more infrastructure to it, sidewalk, a width, a depth to it. It is a lot more expensive than a driveway.
Because it's required to be to public street standards.
What we're finding is that we're seeing some folks started to take advantage of the rules that you put in place a couple of years ago of finding a double-sized lot, subdividing it off, putting another home in there. We are finding that whenever they get to a little bit bigger than that and they want to put a third one on, they get stopped. And also it doesn't look like it would fit properly, honestly, in a neighborhood. Like imagine just sort of in the middle of a block and saying, okay, now we're gonna put a 35-foot, 40-foot wide road right of way through it. It doesn't feel.
And it can often eat most of the,
Right.
some of these
If-
lots
if
are
they could
not
ever
that
build,
wide,
yeah.
yeah.
So we think that that really should be right-sized down to be more like a little driveway, which
Yeah.
you know, would still have to meet fire standards, they still have to be safe, but they would be a lot less infrastructure. We explored the possibility of using TDRs for it. And it might be possible, but our sense was that in this initial test that we talked about of the city being satisfied if they do and if they don't, what we've seen on drawings is that neighborhoods would be really unhappy if they saw somebody actually build one of these because it really eats a lot of land in a
Or
way
the-
that looks outsized for that
Or
neighborhood.
the choice is not even that they do the development with TDRs or they do the development without TDRs. The choice is really, do they do the development or not?
Right, so
And
they
then
just
you
don't
end up
build that
with,
third
they just
home.
don't build the third home or they don't do the infill on the slightly larger site.
When
And
you say a driveway, you're talking about something like the road that goes from is it Old Stage Road through to Cider Mill? That's a pathway, but it's also good for fire trucks.
What I'm talking about really is imagine a half acre lot, so 20,000 square feet. And they say, what if we put 3 homes in here? Right now, our rules say if you wanna put 3 homes served by a single access point, that has to be built as a road. Like a road with all the infrastructure with it, which would both feel dramatically outsized for serving 3 homes. Or as
Or
Kelsey
built
said, they're
road.
just gonna build 2. And that's our own rule that has set that the number 3 creates that.
or 2 doesn't pencil and they don't build anything.
Right.
That's the most
So
extreme.
it's not even to the level of what you're speaking about, it's really just, you know, somebody wanted to take a 20,000 square foot lot and put 3 buildings on it.
But you think that we should address
We
this? and
we
clean
think
up
it
the
could
LDR?
theoretically be TDRs, but it would be
Better,
better served to just fix it, period, because
And what's the fix?
the fix would be, well, I don't have a one-line fix, but the fix would be to shift what can be on a driveway essentially. And to just lower the infrastructure expectation.
And it would still it would likely have a length limitation. You couldn't just do it forever because you felt like putting 3 things at the end of a 600-foot like driveway. So there's some dimensional requirements we'd have to talk to fire about and other things, but it would intentionally be for those like half acre to an acre size lots trying to fit a 3rd home or even a 4th home maybe, depending on what you can fit for a turnaround and other stuff.
Yeah.
A driveway, but with some.
Rounds out.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, it'd be the driveway with fire would typically require it, two cars to be able to pass each other, it doesn't have to be a road, but enough width that
Yeah.
that they're not, if it's okay, I'm gonna move on to the next ones. We just talked about the dwelling unit size, so I'm gonna skip past that one. The next one, we talked about this a little bit at the beginning of setting a ratio that says, it should say ratio, I know it says ration. Of
This was before lunch.
impervious surface to building coverage. And so especially in our more industrial areas, what we see is, and you can see that in the chart here, oftentimes somewhere between 3.5 to 1 to 5 to 1 is what we're seeing as the relationship of impervious surface like parking to buildings. So if you have in the example of the new dentist's office, the building is 5,000 square feet, the lot coverage is 20,000 square feet. So the building is only taking up,
A quarter.
a quarter of all of the area that has been paved on that property. And then you expand upwards to Randall Street has a design build contractor 5 to 1 ratio, On Logic is a 4 to 1 ratio. So theoretically, you could set something that said maximum 2 to 1 ratio, and then you can buy TDRs for it. What we can't control in there is what they choose within the regulations to do with that ratio, so they might, scrimp on, Tech Park has that nice walking trail through it, so they might say, forget it, we're not buying TDRs to build that. I think that's actually a stone dust pass, so it wouldn't qualify, but imagine that being something like a shared use. Pass.
Or an outside patio where your employees can eat.
Right,
you
beyond
know,
the minimums of the city.
Beyond,
codes.
yes.
Right.
Like you have this design for this nice site for your employees to do whatever, and then you run into this and you say, well, I need my parking, so I'm gonna cut the patio. That's a potential outcome.
Right, but the likelihood of that is being a problem is lesser in the industrial areas
Yeah.
than in the city center type areas, because so much of that land is used for parking and circulation.
And I mean, the reality of companies is that they're made up of people. And if their lot is not being used, and the people who work for that company say, why don't we have a place where we can eat outside? I mean, those kinds of things, I think, don't always have to be regulated. I think, yeah.
The practical in this one, so the big pro and con.
Down would say,
I've worked in corporate.
go sit in your car.
I eat at my desk.
Two clarifying questions.
Yeah.
If we did something like this, it doesn't have any impact on the requirement that they still have to manage the stormwater and all the runoff has to be treated, and
Correct.
so it's not giving them any leeway, it's just they've got a bigger issue that they need to deal with if we're giving them more impervious.
Well, you may ultimately, if you chose to manipulate the ratio.
Right.
You may never actually increase the total that they're allowed to do at all from today. You could still keep a cap of exactly where it is today, or 50 or 60%, whatever the number is.
Okay. Just trading buildings.
This
for
one is
parking
an idea about the relationship of the two.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's either incentivizing folks to
Overbuild your building.
bigger build, or more likely to sharpen their pencils on whether they want to build all that parking or not. Are they willing to pay a little bit more for it?
'Cause,
What
yeah.
we've seen, and it's hard to say the last 2-3 years with construction costs, what we had seen in prior years was it was a lot cheaper to build more parking than to build it in a future stage if you ever needed it. So we have had in our rules for decades the ability to get an approval for more parking but not build it. In my entire time here, only one property has ever taken advantage of that rule, and it was a transitional housing for folks who didn't own cars. So they were getting around having to build the parking at all. Everybody else it's just a lot cheaper when all the vehicles are out there to just build all the parking right away.
So this doesn't increase the total impervious,
It just,
just the ratio of what they can
Yeah.
do.
just the
Okay.
ratio.
And then they'd still have the landscaping requirements as far as
Yep.
patios and all that sort of stuff, which is
Specific
probably why they
amenities.
throw it in, and that's probably why they build the place for the
Yep.
Because they've got it satisfied.
But it
the
is
land
creating a
requirement.
constraint that doesn't exist today.
Right.
Right, so to Duncan's point before, that is creating a constraint, yeah. So let's,
Is there a general feeling on wanting to pursue that or not pursue that?
I'm outvoted on that one, but we'll move forward.
The next one is the subject of building width and depth. So there has been some conversation in the commission in prior years about the possibility of, you know, what could you do to incentivize or require more variety in the scale of some of the larger buildings that we're seeing built in the city. You could conceivably, as it's indicated here, cap the width or depth of a building and then allow it to get purchased to be wider. This is a tricky one to get right because people may decide to just turn the building then. And in some parts of the city, we have requirements for how much of the length along the street needs to be a building. But in other parts, we don't. So you could wind up with somebody just saying, oh, I'm just gonna turn the building 90 degrees, not have to pay my TDRs. And the result is actually a less good quality urban design, just so that they're not having to buy TDRs. So this would be a tricky one, but conceivably it could be done. If you chose to advance it, we would, you know, given all the conversations that you've had about city center and the TIF and all that, we would recommend testing it out not in city center. Because we don't know that we would be able to hit this one precisely.
So when you say that they would turn the building, would we end up with like what we have here on Market Street, where between buildings, there are nice little terraces where people can sit? Or
Not, right? I
Or
mean,
not.
that's the tricky thing is, right? So like in city center, we've built some pretty strong rules that say that buildings need to take up 70 or more % of the width along the street, but that doesn't exist outside of city center. And so what you might get is like, imagine that this is, say, Shelburne Road here, you might get the building just doing this.
Right.
Because, oh, we're not wider than we needed, than when we were allowed to do, and then you get, you know, maybe unused space
Yeah.
that isn't necessarily high quality space, it's just space that isn't the building. It might be all the mechanicals or, you know,
Right, and when
it
we're,
doesn't guarantee that it's quality space, it just means it's not a building.
and when we're talking about walkability and bikeability, like you could be adding hundreds of feet between buildings that is not necessary, and then you don't have that pedestrian scale frontage on a street.
Right.
Because pocket parks are nice too, but you're saying there's nothing that would guarantee that we'd get some nice pocket
Right.
parks.
Well, and I think that that's where it's not that it couldn't have good outcomes, it's that of all these tools in here, this is probably the trickiest one to get right because there's so many different little moving parts to it that somebody who didn't want to achieve a great outcome, if that wasn't their goal, could deliver something that was disappointing to the city.
So
That's
like
the.
Minecraft.
Is this one that you would like to explore further?
Not me.
Yes.
I would, I like, I like playing with, yeah, Legos.
But in the other memo you
Michael, I can go play with Legos together.
you mentioned several districts that in the old memo. Oh, no, April. Additional height of 1 or 2 stories or their foot equivalent in the high scale mixed use C1 auto. And a few others.
So we would be happy to revisit those, Michael. The reason that they're not in this memo this week is that your guidance in April as a commission was as you're considering the subject generally, you wanted us to sharpen our pencils on these tools.
Yep.
Specifically so that you could see what the options are out there. That did not take any of the other ones off the table, but we were trying to come back with the thing that you asked us as a group to look at, which was these sort of getting the adjusting the market essentially.
Yeah, from just my own perspective, this one's a little bit, it's more of a lift than some of the others because you are both building the regulation and then building the TDRs as to get the exception from the regulation, where other things, we already have the regulation in some form. This is something that is not currently regulated in most of the city and in the areas that we would want to be talking about TDRs. So you're kind of both building it up and taking it down at the same time. So maybe it could be something that's worth exploring as a regulation in the first instance.
It almost sounds to me like
Separately.
this is a separate topic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That this may be a little too much to kind of do in this effort, maybe put a pin in that one and come back.
Yeah.
Add it as its own item at some point on the work list. It's just the way you're describing it, it sounds like it's gonna be a lot of work and it may or may not pan out, so.
Two
It would be, for everything we've talked about so far, it would be at the bottom of my list
I'm
of
hearing
things.
an undercurrent that they'd rather not do it, but I'm okay with that, but
So,
it would table that one. But again, I'm just wondering.
Well, I think for the purposes of, if it's okay with you all, for the purposes of tonight, in terms of where we start to spend, nothing is finalized at all tonight, but in terms of where staff focuses some effort, maybe if three of you are saying, let's spend some time on this one, it doesn't mean the others are off the table, but it gives us some like, where should we initially spend time? Is that okay with all of you? So I'm hearing maybe this one doesn't hit three of you, but the other two did. And then the last one that we were gonna talk about that you already did flag was manipulating what a TDR is worth in some areas of the city.
That sounds like a very good one.
And variable.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Target the areas we want.
Or,
mhm.
Yeah.
you got
I
us.
think that sounds great.
So what we would be doing in that one is, we did do a very, very sort of back of the envelope. We would need to make sure that, as Kelsey indicated a little while ago, that there are still enough receiving potential to use the TDRs that exist. So let's say there's.
If you put the value too high, you may sell 10 TDRs, but there's not enough space for
Right, you
400.
may have the ability to sell 10
Right, the
TDRs
ability.
and not the ability to sell the other 390, and
Yeah.
that would be a problem, but I don't think is doing
It's likely not
something in
that
the neighborhood
dramatic.
of what Michael is talking about of 4 or 5 or even more than that isn't likely gonna create that problem. But we would look into that.
Great.
I think that's all we had on this one for tonight. We'll bring back the more full list, including the items that Michael had raised previously, but we wanted to sort of have a little bit of a focused conversation on these types of tools.
Well, it would be great to have a fuller commission
Mhm.
to go over that too.
May I make a comment?
Yeah, go ahead.
Can we look at this from the completely other direction where a landowner who has NRP land doesn't really want to try to sell the TDRs, but just wants to conserve the property with the TDR intent, right? So if they want to do that, if they follow the normal TDR, they would sell the TDR, they still have to survey the property they wanted to conserve.
Yeah.
Right, and then they'd have to file a deed
Yep.
with the city saying.
Density reduction easement.
Oh, okay, all right, but that has a cost, right?
Yeah.
The survey has a cost, the
Legal.
filing has a cost, right? And so the question is there, would open space funds pay for that survey and possibly the filing? If somebody wanted just to do it and then forget the TDR part.
Let me answer the question slightly more generally,
Okay.
Tim. If the city, through a mechanism in the budget
Yeah.
or city council, were to say that we as a city would be willing to offset the costs of, doing the survey and filing, that would be, I don't see any reason why that couldn't exist. Whether the open space fund specifically could or couldn't, I think, we'd have to look at it, because I've never looked at it from that angle, but conceptually,
Yeah.
certainly, I think that's,
That would be a big plus
More-
for the seller.
what's that?
It would be a big plus for the seller.
If the
Because
seller-
they have complained about cost.
If they're selling a few, like they have 2 or 3 TDRs, the legal costs and the surveying costs are a much higher percentage. If they're selling 60, that's the math is different.
Right, but it is certainly, one of the tools that we've looked at in the past were tools that might allow, 1 or 2 TDRs to be sold at a time. that's tough, honestly, because the costs associated with doing all that. Last time I had asked about it was, in the neighborhood of $2,000 to $4,000, which if you're selling a TDR for 8 to 15,
10 or 12.
it starts to say, is it worth my time?
Right.
To put this permanent encumbrance on my land, and all I get is, a handful of $1,000.
And the other thing, Tim, is just to mention, a landowner, even regardless of TDRs, can always put a conservation easement on their own property.
True.
So that's something that they can, and the city could decide to have a program where you incentivize people doing that, so then some amount of the cost is covered regardless of TDRs, just for.
And the city
for
has
properties.
occasionally done that. When Sarah Dopp, before she passed, decided to place her land in permanent conservation through the Vermont Land Trust, she had approached the city with use of the open space fund for a offset of some of the legal costs of doing that, and the city council had put in a few $1,000s towards that. So that's an example of that. It didn't use the TDRs,
Right.
but it had the same ultimate function.
But the VLT is or was holding a lot of TDRs from bread and butter, like 25 or more.
They own
Hmm.
at least, I believe it's closer to 150.
Well.
But through a totally separate
Yeah.
mechanism,
Yeah.
they, as part of a land deal, they became the landowner and therefore inherited the TDRs.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you, Tim. Okay,
Make sure if anybody on the public had any.
do we have any comments from the public? All right, no hands?
Okay.
We are on to number 7, 802 homes.
Double checking.
Oh, okay.
Do you want me to put this, the section?
Yes.
Slides?
Oh,
However you want to do it. It's your,
you don't mind.
okay.
I mean, I can talk about it generally. Well,
Why don't you speak about it generally?
generally, we are coordinated. 802 Homes is a state level program that's been going on for about a year now. The intention being that the state, with outside architectural consulting, develops a set of plans, floor plans for different types of housing units that would, and in their own words, sort of fit into the Vermont vernacular. So they're things that have functional equivalents, not sort of decorative equivalents, but functional equivalents in our cities and towns across the state. With the idea that if these kinds of floor plans are already done, then people aren't necessarily needing to hire an architect and hire a designer and something else to be able to, it takes a step away out of the process of developing small amounts of housing. Primarily focused on small amounts of housing. They're looking at about 10 housing types, from single family to multifamily. I think it's up to 4 or 6 units.
I think there's a 10-plex. in
Oh,
there.
is there a
Yeah.
10-plex? Okay. So it's up to a reasonable sort of number of units that are all, they meet building code, they have general appearance that fits into a Vermont village or a city or a town or wherever the context may be, and come with sort of these plans that municipalities could sort of fold into their regulations by reference, by saying, and streamline permitting for some of these things, that this plan set is one of the, approved 10 designs. So then when they come in, it's already sort of pre-approved under especially building code. Things like setbacks and other requirements would still be, you'd have to still review some of that, but it takes, again, on the design side, some cost out, and on the permitting side, at least some time and potentially some cost out on the other side.
And potentially a lot from the design cost, because
Yes.
right now it's at floor plans, but the deliverable by the end of the year is construction ready,
Mhm.
meaning there's gonna be 3 levels of energy compliance. The minimum level will meet the state's minimum codes and then go up from there. And they will all be designed to, as their sort of presumption to be electric heating, with the ability, if they don't control the actual design, heating and cooling. The insulation may be fuel of another type, but in terms of our regulations where we require carbon-free or renewable heating, it would be
It
compliant
would
with
be able
that
to-
from
you'd
day
be
one.
able to do it, yeah.
Um,
Some are ADA compliant or have an ADA compliant first floor. They're not all fully ADA compliant because that's a lot of other considerations that don't necessarily always have to apply in private single-family homes. Some municipalities there's a handful that have been working more closely with the state to be sort of developing these plans. Essex Junction is one. Manchester, Vermont is one. Someone in Washington County, and I'm not remembering which one in Washington County, but sort of spread out kind of different types of places in the state. More recently, Burlington has been working a little more closely with them as the more sort of urban design end of things. And as Paul said, by the end of the year, the goal is to have these construction-ready plans that can be used by people to build these homes.
It was set up as a request to get 5 or 6 different communities at different scales around the
Mhm.
state to be the sort of tester communities. We did apply.
Yeah. They didn't pick us.
They didn't pick us, but it doesn't mean that it's not applicable to it. They just, picked Essex Junction and Burlington in our area instead, but
They didn't initially pick Burlington. They've
Okay.
more recently been
um
folded in.
what I thought we'd do is just go through just a quick little, what are these looking like? This one happens to, the most recent presentation that they made was a couple weeks ago and happened to be in partnership with AARP, and so they're focused on age-friendly housing, but it's really the same housing types. It's the most recent version. Our very quick look at this is that our regulations are really well set up to be achieving this. And in the conversation that you just had about TDRs, about lot sizes, this might be some complementary ways to both either specifically call these out in the future or just know that this is something that the state has been working on in parallel to make that much more easy to build in a way that reflects the Vermont vernacular.
Are those some of the,
They are, and I'm gonna show them, those are just little thumbnails, so I'm gonna show them a little bit more.
Yeah, and just as a bit of introduction before we get sort of into it, what they've done is they've drawn sort of this sort of sketch elevations of a building and then found an existing one in the state of Vermont that is in a similar type. It's not gonna be exactly the same as the sketch. Because of the nature of housing in Vermont, many of the smaller sizes especially are, buildings from the 19th century. There's a lot in buildings like that you may see in a photo that are not actually permissible now under building code or are very expensive to do. And so just previewing that the picture of an example is not necessarily what a built home under the approved plan would look like because of just differences in the couple of centuries that have passed between. Just
So
expectations management.
can you slide that over so we can see it a little bit bigger? So I think you all know this subject, but the one of the core challenges that we're facing across the country is what we see built typically are single-family homes, sometimes duplexes, and large multiplexes. And everything that has existed historically in the middle, with the exception of some townhomes in our community, doesn't exist, isn't being built. And so this is trying to aim at how do we help get more of that housing stock, which is often an entry point for families. It's flexible often for different generations and sizes of families, and it's just not something that we've seen built for a very long time. I'm gonna skip through a lot of their process stuff because I think the thing that we mostly wanted to focus on with you was some of the context. So they talk a lot about infrastructure. I think we've cared for that a lot in our community. And I'm gonna go straight to, I'm just trying not to go past it. Okay.
Oh, we did pass one thing that you don't need to scroll back to. I just wanted to mention, I think most, if not all of the homes are designed that they don't have to be modularly built, but they can be. So some of them are, easier to build, just stick built like you would like sort of traditional construction. But most, if not all of them are also simplified in a way that you could be doing it offsite and bringing it on, as a partial building or in panels.
Why Vermont companies?
By Vermont
Could be.
companies.
Kelsey and I met a little while ago,
Mhm.
along with Bettina with a modular home constructor in Essex,
Mhm.
that has been really focusing on, their target market has been accessory dwelling units, but, this is the kind of, if they saw one of these and it was just a little bit bigger, then it might create this
Well, and
opportunity.
theirs even go up to 1,200 or something square feet.
So some of the examples here, go from all the way down from a small single unit up to, stackable or row homes. And, come on. Home designs, here we go. So these are intended to be things that you would see around Vermont in different ways, not necessarily always in South Burlington, because some of the, historic components are a little bit older than our vernacular, but, the small, narrow, home that could fit on a very small, narrow lot is an example. This one's only 14 feet wide, so theoretically you could have a lot that was, 25 feet wide and meet this. And then it's just showing for each of these an example of what this would look like as a layout. Moving up to a larger, potentially 2.5 story, 2 dwelling unit. Again, the size here is only 28 feet wide by 48 feet long, so that's less than, what is that? Building footprint of 500 or 600 square feet. Sorry,
It's about
1,000 square
1,000
feet,
square
yeah.
feet.
So, could easily fit on a much smaller than
Yep.
5,000 square foot lot. A sort of what has been historically built in Vermont of looking like a single family home, but being a fourplex, something that is not exactly this style, but is along these lines is what Habitat for Humanity built on
Heinsberg Road.
Heinsberg Road, just a couple of doors down from the Price Chopper. So that's a fourplex, but if you're going by quickly, you wouldn't really notice that it wasn't, maybe you'd think it was a duplex. But there's actually 4 in there, and it's the same size as a lot of single family homes.
Don't we also have them on Spear Street near the UVM horse barn? Oh, from years ago, I remember there's a development just north of that. I think it's the cow barn, but there are horses there off of Spear Street, just
Spear Street?
south of Gutterson.
Like the quarry.
Maybe Cornell?
Is that it? Yes, maybe, but in that, yeah, I don't know.
Not at that scale.
No,
No.
okay.
No, because in Quarry Hill, there are some long townhomes that were built in the 70s, 60s, and then there's 30-unit buildings. That's all there is in there.
Okay. I don't know what I'm thinking of. I'll look for it after.
A narrow lot fourplex, something that we see in some of the smaller communities in the state. I don't think we've got anything quite like this in our community.
No,
Um,
there are some in Burlington that are similar.
Would these pass muster with the historic districts like in Burlington for ADUs? Do you know? If you guess? Would they be forced to do that?
Forced to do,
To accept any of these designs?
No, but so this is a non-regulatory program, so it's not forcing anybody to do anything, but I do think that the intent of this program has been to allow for a lot that exists in a place like Burlington or Bellows Falls or
Yeah.
Rutland to be able to replicate in a modern way a thing that did exist. So I think the hope is that we will start to see some vacant lots being filled with things that people haven't seen built in a really long time. Adaptable units, so units that could be expanded to in the future or become fully accessible. So side-by-side duplex, we see a lot of duplexes in our community, not necessarily shaped this way. We often see them with the large 2-car garages attached to each side. But this is the type of thing that could be added to, and then you could even have row homes, especially in our more urban areas.
It's
Um,
not dissimilar to the townhouses on Market Street. Except for the other threes.
This one here, this back-to-back duplex, seems like you've had some conversations in the commission about how existing neighborhoods could potentially see infill within them. This kind of setup is something that I could imagine seeing somebody taking an existing home and adding to the back of it and saying, what if we created a second entrance? So having a model like this, obviously this is for a brand new version, but you can imagine also that how this could fit into a neighborhood where somebody just said, you know, I'm gonna tack onto the back and then make this second door that
And-
still feels.
And
One
on
on Gilbert Street.
that's how this sort of housing type has been built historically, is a single family home, and then they add on to the back, and then maybe add on again, but like, you know, you end up with houses telescoping off the street. That have 2 or 3 or 4 units in them.
Foursquare, very common house type in Winooski and in Burlington to a certain extent. These 26 by 26 floor plans. I've seen at least one recently that was a one-story version of this being built that showed the exact same floor print and how that was built as an accessory dwelling unit. And so thinking about how that could fit really nicely into a Vermont vernacular. And fit into our communities. And then this one to me has a very South Village feel to it. The paired starter home. And then I think it goes up to a couple of the townhome, which this looks very similar in some ways to the east end of Market Street, the ones that David Schenk had built. And actually, I sent.
Character, I like this.
I actually sent a couple of examples, including the east end of Market Street, over to the folks putting this together. My feedback was, or our feedback was that it's great that there are a lot of pictures of these buildings existing. Almost all of these pictures are 100 years old. They're trying to thread this needle between, they want people who are seeing this to see their villages
That would fit in.
that would fit into their villages, and so they don't wanna say, oh, look at all these more modern versions of these things that get a negative reaction, but at the same time, the feedback that we get is folks who are builders and developers say, well, that's nice that that was 100 years ago, but that is not relevant to construction styles today, so.
Or even neighbors after it's built saying, that's not what we were promised from the package that said it was gonna look like this with a slate roof.
Right, so we've given a few examples of what we think are some good modern examples that look like these. Anyway, there's no action item on this today, but we wanted to let you know about this big thing that's happening at the state level to really look at housing from a very different perspective. You know, if there is a component of it that's of all this work on the housing that's been on the financing side, there's been a lot of regulatory tools, and this is how do we just make it simpler to do? And so we've been tracking this as it's been going on, and our intent is to look as this gets closer and closer to the finish line, to look to see what opportunities might exist in our regulations to make sure that we can accommodate if not all of these, then at least all of these that feel like South Burlington, and make it really easy to achieve, so they don't, get to us and then say, oh,
We have an
except that you guys say that it has to be,
6 feet instead of
right, 4 feet,
8
and therefore the whole plans are useless, right?
Yeah.
Like that kind of thing.
inadvertent roadblocks. When we were like, this is a great program, and then accidentally we have something somewhere in our regulations that, just throws it off, that it's not approvable under our regulations. If for not any other reason, then we chose a round number of 10 instead of 8 or
Right.
whatever it is.
Yeah. So that's what we got. More to come.
Yeah, good.
Awesome. That's great. All right, we have some minutes to approve.
And this Plan BTV New North End thing. Is that in the minutes first? That's right. Oh, you're right, New business.
I had a couple of minutes.
Tim,
Page 4. He attributed this to the greenery in Swiss Street. I think what I said was that it was attributed to the fact that in the area there's Veteran Memorial Park, and Wheeler Park and the golf course, all open green spaces that probably accounted for the drop in temperature between Burlington and not just greenery of Swift Street.
Do you have a specific wording change that you want, or do you want to hold?
You could say
approval of
he
the minutes?
attributed this to the Veterans Memorial Park, Wheeler Nature Park, and Vermont National Golf Course.
Okay.
Okay.
Did you get this?
And then on the next paragraph, I think she put city plan, but I think I said climate action plan.
Sue is looking to speak.
Sue, you are allowed to speak, you just need to unmute.
Yep, thank you. Remember that this was a meeting where one could barely understand what anybody was saying. So the fact that anything got recorded is tantamount to a miracle.
Yeah,
So
no, I remember that.
You want to
You're
change
right.
anything, change anything, because I will not guarantee that that was what was said. But I
That's
will
it.
tell you that whoever fixed it did a good job.
We can thank John Leframboise for that. He was
Yeah.
on it the next morning.
Yep, it's perfect now.
Thank you, Sue.
Apart from that.
All right, so,
move to approve those minutes with
with
those
the-
changes.
Second?
all in favor?
I,
That is unanimous. Which it needs to be. And then we have other business. I know you guys had something you want to.
So we, as part of our Act 250 Tier 1A application, as you know, we made, you all added in a new section on rare, threatened, and endangered species. We worked with the Agency of Natural Resources to develop that in a way that would be consistent with the law. We reached out to them last week. They had reviewed prior versions of the draft and were expressed that they were fine with it. We reached out to them last week, because they are a party to this whole Act 250 proceeding, we said, here's where we're at. We worked collaboratively on this. Would you be, we get a letter of support that we're on the right track. They reviewed it. They are excited to give us a letter of support, and they found a couple little tweaks that they would like to recommend that we make. We communicated to them and said, oh, we wish that had been earlier in the process, because we are now in front of city council and it is a complex procedure to amend it. But what we said was, instead, basically there's about 4 little tweaks. They fall into 2 buckets. One of the buckets is ways to slightly clarify it. So for example, one of the things in there says that if there is no guidance from formal written papers on what to do with this specific species, then the professional opinion of the Agency of Natural Resources staff provided in writing shall be given weight by the DRB, essentially. They wanted to add a statement or issuance of the specific permit that they issue for allowing taking, they use the word taking, but the removal of well, essentially for part of the
or removal of the plant. Or,
right, removal of plant. So they wanted to say, or that. It's a good tweak, but it doesn't fundamentally change the purpose. One other one that they had was that they identified that there is one lack of clarity in the regulations where it says in one subsequent paragraphs to one another, if there's no species identified in the property through the mapping, then you are not required to go through the permitting. And then the next paragraph says, if there's a species within a quarter mile,
half a mile
then
of the development
of the development, so not necessarily the parcel, but of the
of the
development,
project.
then you have to map that. And
Right.
therefore it implies that you are subject to it, so it's a little bit of.
The
lack
intention
of
being that
clarity.
if there's nothing on the property, then you're out. And you're also out if there's nothing within a half a mile of the development. So if you have a very large property, then, and it's, you know, the frogs over there and your development's over there, then maybe you're still fine because of that distance. But the way we upon rereading in their comments, it was like, yeah, that could be clarified that, what does that mean if you are on the property, or off the property, but
Right.
within a half a mile, so.
Because what about birds and crawling?
So it's really just sort of like, the
Walking.
problem is it doesn't give clear direction of the DRB of, is it in or is it out?
Mhm.
So we suggested to them that in your next round of amendments that we may be coming forward in the not too distant future, that these be incorporated in. And, you know, understanding that there's always room for improvement in these, and they said that they liked that idea, that they supported the approach we were taking, and we said we were gonna talk with you tonight about it, just to get your read on, you know, would making those kinds of tweaks be appropriate in your next round? That might be, if you choose to advance the, you decided back in June, end of June, to hold on the bedrock amendment. If you decide to advance it, it could go with that one, for example, or a subsequent one, so. But not to hold up the whole process for it.
Can I raise just a couple of questions about the presentation we had from Wake Robin related to the Hill Farm? What is the action that we might be required to? It has to do with in or outside the transit overlay district.
The fundamental question, or the request that came from the property owner was to allow for
Long-term care.
long-term care facilities, which is a form of
Mhm.
assisted living in various forms,
Mhm.
to be allowed in that area of the city, so south of the interstate on the Hill Farm and adjacent areas. The technical mechanism might have to be, it is not allowed outside of the transit overlay district today. That could be a technical outcome. The policy question is allowing it in that area or not. And so that's where you approved at your last meeting the scope of work to go through that effort.
To allow for the use outside.
Yeah.
And then the person from Wake Robin, I think, flagged that there are two definitions that apply in different areas of the city.
Yep.
Slightly differently, and so that might be an opportunity to tidy that up at the same time. We'll see.
It's relation to state statute as well.
My other question was related to the official map where it shows a road going from South Village to Nolan Farm Road through various properties.
Right.
One of which is the park, Hubbard Park, but since there's no development, they don't care. But for others, it's a problem because it's holding up something. It's holding up the development, Habitat for Humanity development on Spear Street. I mean, we need to get it off somehow, get that road off, but I don't know when we want to do a review of the map.
So in a more broad sense, updating the official map is on your work plan this year. So
I think we should probably give it some priority to make sure that we can have that development, which is 12 affordable housing on.
in the specifics of that issue, there is a process that is already underway where under state law, the way the official map works, so the official map is a complement to this, to land development regulations. It's a separate tool, but they work together. Development projects must accommodate the feature that's shown on the official map. If they choose not to, then the feature that's on the official map goes to the city council, where they have 120 days from the determination from the development review board that it was not included to either take action to acquire that or not. And if they choose not to take action, then it goes back to the DRB without regard to the official map component. So there is a mechanism regardless of change in the policy, and that is in place. So the DRB in that particular project denied the subdivision with the full knowledge and
Which is actually the trigger for the process.
That's the trigger for the process, and the applicant was aware of that, and they knew that they knew the process, and they were supportive of going through the steps in the process. Next week, the council will be receiving that official map consideration, and they'll have 120 days from July 10th when the DRB issued their decision. So there is a mechanism to address the issue, in the specific, in the broad, on the official map and right sizing it to our community in all the different ways is under.
Okay, so. It looks like at some point we have to vote on officers, but that's not happening tonight.
So that's something
Not happening here.
I know there's only 4 of you there, but I would love to know for August 11th, August 25th, September 8th, and September 22nd. Are any of you missing any of those meetings?
Didn't we answer that in an email?
It was in the packet so that you were prepared to tell me the
I can't
answer.
answer that question.
Duncan,
What was the first date?
August 11th,
I'm here.
Yeah, I'm here for that.
okay?
That's okay.
August 25th,
I'm
I'm
here.
here.
Duncan's a
Yes, next, September.
September 8th,
I will not,
I'm here.
I believe I'm here for that one.
Two of those are my family's birthdays.
so no John
Yeah.
on September 8th, but Michael and Megan, yes?
Yep.
Okay, and September 22nd.
Yeah.
Yes.
Did you just take the second half of the month? What's happening?
I don't like the later meetings.
Yeah.
Did we manage to capture 3 of your family members' birthdays now?
No,
Ann?
just 2.
Bring them along.
Okay, so right now it looks like amongst all of you, there would be
August 11th sounds
August
pretty good.
11th, so
We have 4 people on
Don't know
August
about Colin.
11th. We don't know about Colin. We don't know about anybody else because I haven't asked
Alright,
this
okay.
directly in an email.
The 4 of us will be here August 11th.
Yep, I'm okay for all those meetings,
Great,
so far.
so far, as of now,
As of now.
'Cause, you
that's
know,
all I can ask.
You know, I'm undergoing CAR T, so I have, every Monday I have an injection of a bispecific monoclonal antibody, and it sometimes makes me feel like shit.
fair enough, Michael.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally fair.
Recording
do it the same-
stopped.
Okay. We don't need to do anything with the city of Burlington.
It's just a notification that we get from our neighboring municipalities about their public hearings for their LDR amendments and plan amendments.
But so this one's actually going to be a component of their BTV city plan they've been going by districts, so now this is the new north end.
And I think it
They did a south end,
was today.
they did a waterfront, yeah.
All right, well then, we are adjourned.
Okay, yeah.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Yeah.